The first sign of something unusual was subtle, almost impossible to notice. Earth had always been watched, though no one truly realized it. Satellites, telescopes, and probes recorded its movements, but beyond the reach of human vision, something else was observing. A fleet unlike anything humans could imagine drifted silently in the dark spaces beyond the outer planets. They did not come with announcements or warnings. They came quietly, calculating every movement, studying every signal, and trying to understand what they had found. From their vantage point far beyond Pluto, the fleet could see the tiny blue planet in perfect detail. Oceans stretched like veins, cities sparkled faintly in the night, and clouds moved in patterns that spoke of weather, of life, of unpredictability. To these observers, Earth was almost insignificant at first glance, a fragile world, filled with creatures that walked on two legs, who had yet to reach the stars. And yet there was something about the signals coming from it that made them pause. They had prepared for conquest many times before. They had approached countless planets and civilizations, each one carefully measured against their own standards. Most were easy to judge. Most fell into clear categories: primitive, dangerous, or unworthy. Earth should have been easy. From their distant view, it seemed disorganized, chaotic even. Humans fought among themselves constantly, sending messages filled with threats and noise, obsessed with power struggles that would have seemed comical to anyone with an unbiased eye. Yet the aliens hesitated. Not because Earth posed an immediate threat. No, the threat was barely visible at this stage. They hesitated because of something else, something hidden in the way the signals carried themselves, the patterns beneath the noise. It was not aggression. It was confidence and perhaps even curiosity. The humans were small, fragile, and messy, yet there was a spark, subtle and almost invisible, that made the observers pause. It began with a single probe. An ancient object drifting through space, almost forgotten. Humans called it Voyager 1. It carried nothing that could harm anyone, no weapons, no defenses. Instead, it carried messages, simple recordings, a glimpse into the lives of the beings who created it. The aliens retrieved it, curious. Why would a species send their voice into the void? Why would they offer music, greetings, and images of themselves to any passerby in the galaxy? They listened, and they were not prepared for what they found. Children laughing, speaking in dozens of different languages, a mother singing a lullaby, simple and human, yet carrying a weight of emotion that seemed foreign to the listeners. Images of people walking, running, building, creating, and among the music and laughter, a single message, simple but profound. To the makers of music, to all worlds, to all times. The aliens could not fully grasp the depth of the words. Peace, perhaps, but also courage. The humans were small, fragile, yet willing to speak directly to the universe, unafraid. It was not a warning, not a threat. It was a statement of existence, and that was enough to make the council hesitate. Days passed, and the aliens intercepted more signals. This time one stood out. Unlike the passive messages of Voyager 1, this transmission was precise, deliberate. Humans had sent it purposefully into space, coded in mathematical sequences, pulsing with information. At first, the aliens thought it was simple curiosity, perhaps an attempt to communicate with intelligent life. They began decoding it, expecting only trivialities. But as they unraveled the sequences, they realized it contained far more. Data on energy frequencies, designs for technology far beyond what humans were thought to be capable of, even glimpses into the ways humans had begun exploring space. The aliens understood quickly. This was a message that carried a warning, but not a direct one. It was a message meant to say, we are aware, we are learning, we are preparing. The fleet paused, unsure how to respond. Their scanners had seen countless species, but few displayed the kind of raw, chaotic ingenuity humans had. And even fewer had the audacity to send their achievements into space before they were fully ready. It was reckless, almost naive, and yet there was intelligence behind the recklessness. A pattern in the chaos. Curiosity led the aliens deeper into Earth's history. Through intercepted broadcasts and databases, they saw wars, conflicts, and catastrophes. Humans had destroyed much of their own world over and over again, yet they rebuilt it every time. Cities rose from ruins. Civilizations recovered from calamities that would have ended any other species. And with each rebirth, humans learned, adapted, and advanced. The observers grew cautious. Not because humans were weapons ready, they were not, at least not yet, but because they could see the trajectory. They could see how quickly a species that seemed fragile could become formidable. Where other planets had collapsed under the weight of their own mistakes, humans thrived. They took failure and turned it into knowledge, weakness into strength. It was during this observation that a transmission arrived that would change everything. Unlike the signals intended to be intercepted, this one was private, hidden in a satellite orbiting the Earth. The aliens had found it by chance, a small pulse of data that slipped through their scans. It was not a threat nor a plea for help. It was a message, simple in its words but profound in its meaning. If you find this message, know that Earth will never kneel. We may fall, but we rise sharper. We may burn, but we learn from the flame. We do not surrender, we adapt. The council froze. The words were not aggressive, but they carried a weight that the aliens could not ignore. Every civilization they had encountered could be measured by weapons, by territory, by numbers. Humans were different. Their strength was not in armies or fleets, at least not yet. Their strength was in willpower, in resilience, in an unyielding desire to survive and to grow. The fleet lingered on the edge of the solar system, watching the planet below. Earth seemed as fragile as ever, a tiny blue marble spinning in the blackness. But the words, the messages, the laughter, and the resilience told a different story. Humans were unpredictable. They were chaotic, yes, but in that chaos was something dangerous. Something that could not be measured with conventional tools. And so, without firing a shot, without a single sign of aggression, the alien fleet began to retreat. No invasion orders were sent. No attacks were planned. For the first time, a civilization had chosen not to conquer, not out of fear of technology, not out of fear of strength, but out of fear of willpower. They had come to study a world they thought was weak. Instead, they left with caution, with respect, and perhaps with fear. Earth continued spinning, unaware of how close it had come to annihilation. Humans went on with their lives, building, exploring, fighting, and loving, completely oblivious to the watchers who had once hovered just beyond their reach. And somewhere in the darkness of space, the fleet moved on, leaving behind only the silent acknowledgement that this species, unpredictable and unyielding, was something to be reckoned with. Even after the alien fleet had retreated, Earth continued spinning in its usual rhythm. Humans went about their lives unaware of how close they had come to being observed, judged, and almost destroyed. The ocean still moved with the same rhythm. Clouds drifted lazily across the skies, and cities buzzed with people rushing from one place to another. Everything seemed ordinary, but the universe had taken note. From the dark edge of space, the aliens remained cautious. They had seen enough to know that humans were unpredictable. Their history showed a species that could destroy itself, and then rise again stronger than before. Every catastrophe, every war, every natural disaster was not an end for humans. It was a lesson, a step in their survival and growth. This realization changed the way the aliens thought about the tiny blue planet. They returned to the records they had intercepted, replaying the old signals again and again. Voyager 1 with its golden record had been a small thing in human terms, yet it carried a weight they could not ignore. Children's laughter, greetings in dozens of languages, images of everyday life. These were things no weapon could measure. They were glimpses into the human spirit, a spirit that seemed to shine brighter the more the species was tested. The aliens also focused on the deliberate signals humans had sent into space. The coded pulses, mathematical sequences, and patterns all suggested intelligence but also confidence. Humans were not waiting for permission to exist in the universe. They were announcing their presence not aggressively but without hesitation. This was something the aliens had not encountered before. Most civilizations were cautious, hidden, and obedient to the unspoken rules of the galaxy. Humans ignored those rules. As the aliens studied more, they began to understand the essence of human resilience. They examined Earth's history, not just from a distance, but in detail. They watched the rise and fall of empires, the devastation of wars, and the scars left on the planet. And yet, with every setback, humans had rebuilt. Entire cities had been destroyed, yet new ones took their place. Knowledge was preserved, innovations continued, and culture thrived. The aliens were puzzled. How could a species that destroyed so much of itself continue to move forward with such determination? They saw the persistence of human curiosity as well. Despite wars and poverty, humans had always looked to the skies, wondering what was beyond their world. They had sent probes, telescopes, and satellites into space, long before they were capable of reaching other stars. Every scientific discovery, every breakthrough, every question asked was a challenge to the universe itself. Humans were not content with the boundaries of their planet. They were reaching for the unknown, even when it could be dangerous. The aliens also observed the way humans communicated with each other. Their languages, their arts, their music. These were not just methods of survival, but expressions of individuality and creativity. They could feel the emotions transmitted in the signals even from far away. Humans laughed, cried, sang, argued, and loved. These were not behaviors designed for efficiency or conquest. They were behaviors born from curiosity, empathy, and imagination. The aliens recognized this as a form of strength, one they had not expected. One day, the alien fleet detected another unusual signal. It was not from a probe or a satellite, but from deep within Earth itself. Scientists had launched a hidden experiment, a signal sent into space with a mix of scientific data and philosophical questions. It asked, "If you exist, who are you? What do you want? How do you live?" The aliens decoded the signal and were struck by its honesty. Humans did not demand answers. They did not issue threats. They simply asked questions seeking understanding. The aliens began to realize that humans were more than their weapons, their conflicts, or their technology. They were a species defined by curiosity, resilience, and adaptability. Every challenge faced had been an opportunity to grow, every disaster a chance to learn. Humans did not surrender to fate. They altered it. This was something few civilizations could do, and even fewer could survive long enough to master. As the observation continued, the aliens began to study human emotions more closely. They had always considered emotions as weaknesses, irrational behaviors that interfered with efficiency and survival. But humans were different. Their emotions drove them, inspired them, and sometimes saved them. Love had led to alliances, grief had led to progress, and courage had overcome fear. These were not just feelings. They were tools, strategies, and even weapons in their own right. The aliens also looked at human unity and conflict. On one hand, humans fought wars and competed for resources. On the other hand, they built communities, cooperated to achieve impossible tasks, and supported each other in times of crisis. This balance between conflict and cooperation was unusual, and it made humans unpredictable. They could destroy themselves, but they could also save themselves in ways no one else could anticipate. Then came the moment that truly froze the alien council. They intercepted a hidden military transmission, one not meant for anyone outside of Earth. It was not a threat, not a boast, but a statement of intent. It read, "If you find this message, know that Earth will never kneel. We may fall, but we rise sharper. We may burn, but we learn from the flame. We do not surrender while we adapt." The words were simple yet powerful. They carried the weight of history, of struggle, and of a species that refused to be conquered. The fleet paused. They had encountered many species, some aggressive, some peaceful, some technologically advanced. But humans were unlike any of them. They were fragile, yet relentless. Unpredictable, yet intelligent. Violent, yet compassionate. And they did not fear the unknown. The aliens realized that any attempt to invade Earth could end disastrously. They could predict weapons and defenses, but the human will, that could not be measured. That could not be calculated. Days turned into weeks as the fleet lingered at the edge of the solar system. They continued to observe, but they did not move closer. They watched as humans continued their lives, building, creating, exploring, and dreaming. Cities grew taller, technology advanced, and space programs reached further. Humans continued to send messages into space, asking questions, offering greetings, and showing the universe who they were. The aliens began to understand something important. Humans were not just a species. They were a force born not of strength, but of resilience and determination. They adapted to challenges that would have destroyed other civilizations. They survived disasters that would have ended other species. They learned, grew, and continued forward, always forward. Eventually, the fleet made a decision. Without a single attack, without issuing a single warning, they began to withdraw. Earth remained untouched, completely unaware of how close it had come to observation and judgment. The aliens noted in their records, species unfit for conquest, a potential apex threat. It was not a compliment. It was a warning even to themselves. Humans were unpredictable, and unpredictability was dangerous. As they left, the aliens looked back at the tiny blue planet one last time. Oceans reflected sunlight, cities glimmered at night, and life continued in ways both ordinary and extraordinary. They understood that humans were not just surviving, they were thriving. And that was something that could not be ignored. For Earth, life continued as always. People worked, laughed, loved, argued, and dreamed. They were unaware of the silent observers who had hovered just beyond their reach. But the universe had taken note, and the lessons learned by the alien fleet would be remembered for a long time. Humans were a species unlike any other, fragile, chaotic, unpredictable, and unstoppable. The aliens stayed just beyond the outer reaches of the solar system, observing Earth as it spun quietly through space. From their distant view, it looked calm, peaceful even. But they knew better. Humans were always moving, always creating, always changing. Even when it seemed like nothing important was happening, small actions were shaping the world in ways that no outsider could fully predict. They watched humans communicate, not just with each other but with the universe itself. Every satellite, probe, and radio transmission carried a piece of human curiosity. Some were scientific experiments, others were messages of peace, some were simple attempts to explore what lay beyond. But all of them shared something deeper, the human desire to reach out, to connect, to understand. It was unlike any signal the aliens had encountered. Most civilizations communicated for control, for trade, for war. Humans communicated to learn, and that was something the aliens could not easily interpret. The fleet turned their attention to human achievements that seemed impossible for their fragile species. They observed rockets breaking the bonds of gravity, satellites orbiting the planet with precision, and space telescopes capturing images of distant galaxies. Humans had done all this while still dealing with countless internal struggles, political disagreements, economic crises, and environmental disasters. The aliens were beginning to realize that human progress did not follow predictable patterns. Every setback seemed to accelerate innovation instead of slowing it. They also noticed human communities coming together in ways that were astonishing to them. When disasters struck, humans helped each other in ways that no military strategy could predict. Earthquakes, hurricanes, floods, fires. Each disaster was met with a mix of courage, ingenuity, and compassion. People risked their lives to save strangers, shared resources, and rebuilt what was lost. The aliens had expected fear and chaos, but they were confronted with something entirely different: the power of collective human determination. Curiosity drove the aliens deeper into the data streams. They studied human science, mathematics, and engineering. They noticed the rapid pace of discovery and the way humans shared knowledge openly. Ideas spread quickly, evolving with each generation, building on the lessons of the past. No other species the aliens had studied shared information so freely or used it so effectively. Humans did not hoard knowledge for power alone. They used it to create, to innovate, and sometimes to survive. Then came the moment that unsettled the fleet even more. They detected a signal unlike any other, one that was subtle, deliberate, and highly encrypted. It was sent from a human research station far from cities, a place dedicated to studying the universe beyond Earth. At first, the aliens thought it was another harmless transmission, a message lost in the noise of the cosmos. But as they decoded it, they discovered something far more profound. The signal contained data on energy patterns, particle behavior, and cosmic phenomena that were far beyond the technological stage humans were believed to have reached. It was not a threat, and it was not a declaration of power. It was knowledge. Knowledge that suggested humans were learning faster than anyone had predicted, experimenting, exploring, and preparing for challenges they could barely imagine. The aliens were confused. They had measured civilizations before, predicting outcomes and calculating risks. But humans could not be predicted. Their intelligence was not linear. Their progress was chaotic yet purposeful. They learned from failure, adapted quickly, and often thrived in situations that would have destroyed other species. Every time the aliens thought they understood humans, another layer revealed itself. Another sign that this species was far more complex than it appeared. The fleet began to focus on human emotions, something they had long considered a weakness in other civilizations. Fear, anger, joy, love. These were unpredictable factors in human behavior. Yet humans had found ways to turn these emotions into strength. Courage in the face of danger, empathy in times of crisis, hope when everything seemed lost. These were tools that no technology could replicate. The aliens began to see that human resilience was rooted not just in intelligence but in emotion itself. They also noticed how humans celebrated achievements, large and small. From scientific discoveries to personal milestones, humans found ways to mark progress, to encourage each other, and to inspire the next generation. These celebrations were not superficial. They reinforced community, creativity, and the drive to keep going even in the face of adversity. The aliens had never seen a species use celebration as a mechanism for survival, and it fascinated them. As the observation continued, the aliens began to notice human unpredictability in a different light. Humans could be reckless, chaotic, and impulsive, yet these qualities often led to breakthroughs. Mistakes were not failures. They were lessons. Every experiment, every failure, every unexpected outcome contributed to their growth. This was not something that could be easily measured, and it left the Alien Council uneasy. Humans were not just a potential threat. They were a wild card in the universe. One day, the aliens intercepted a hidden broadcast, a transmission meant only for those with advanced decoding capabilities. It was a record of human history, a reflection of their struggles, victories, and lessons learned. It recounted wars, natural disasters, scientific discoveries, and cultural achievements. It also included simple messages, meant to be understood across species. Messages of resilience, hope, and determination. The aliens read the words carefully. We may fall, but we rise. We may burn, but we learn from the flame. We do not surrender. We adapt. The meaning was clear. Humans were not afraid of failure. They embraced it, learned from it, and used it to grow stronger. This message was not a threat, yet it carried an implicit warning. Humans were unpredictable, and that unpredictability made them dangerous to anyone who underestimated them. The fleet remained at the edge of the solar system, watching silently. They had approached many civilizations, measured their strength, and made calculations about their potential. Humans defied every expectation. They were fragile yet resilient, chaotic yet intelligent, violent yet capable of compassion. The aliens realized that attacking Earth would not be a simple task. They could not calculate the outcomes, and the consequences of misjudgment could be catastrophic. Over time, the aliens began to feel a strange respect for humanity. They had expected an easy conquest, a species that could be measured, predicted, and defeated. Instead, they found a civilization that was alive in ways that went beyond technology or weapons. Humans were a force of will, creativity, and determination. They thrived on challenges, learned from failure, and reached for the unknown. The aliens understood that Earth was not weak. It was alive, vibrant, and capable of far more than anyone could imagine. And so the fleet remained at a distance, observing without intervening. Earth continued to spin, seemingly ordinary but with a vitality that could not be ignored. Humans went on with their lives, building cities, exploring space, and dreaming of the future. They were unaware of the silent watchers beyond their skies, but the universe had taken note. The aliens had come to study, to understand, and perhaps to conquer. Instead, they had found something they could not conquer: the human spirit. It was unpredictable, chaotic, and unstoppable. They had learned that strength was not measured by weapons or fleets alone, but by resilience, adaptability, and the will to survive. Humans embodied all of these qualities in ways that defied understanding. For Earth, life continued as usual. People worked, learned, laughed, and loved. They argued, fought, and made mistakes, but they also created, healed, and grew. They were unaware of the fleet that had observed them, measured them, and ultimately decided to wait. The aliens had learned that humans were not just another species. They were a force of nature, unpredictable and unstoppable, and they were only beginning to reach their potential. The fleet eventually withdrew, moving silently into the depths of space. Earth remained untouched, thriving in ignorance of the danger that had almost surrounded it. The aliens left behind a silent acknowledgement. Humans were unpredictable, resilient, and capable of surviving anything. Any attempt to underestimate them would be a mistake. And so, humans continued to live their lives, unaware that the universe had taken note of them in ways both dangerous and profound. They continued to reach for the stars, to learn, to build, and to dream. The aliens had watched, learned, and ultimately paused, leaving Earth free, not because it was weak, but because it was too strong in ways no one could measure. Even as the alien fleet drifted in the distant reaches of space, they could not stop thinking about Earth. From a distance, the planet seemed fragile, tiny, and ordinary. Oceans, clouds, mountains, and cities glimmered like small jewels in the sunlight. Yet what the aliens could not ignore was the complexity hidden beneath that surface. Humans were alive in ways that no machine, weapon, or scanner could fully understand. The more the aliens observed, the more they realized that humans were not predictable. Every time they thought they had the species figured out, another layer appeared. A sudden innovation, an unexpected act of kindness, a display of courage. All of it was beyond what any calculation could prepare for. Humans were messy, chaotic, and yet somehow brilliant. Their unpredictability made the aliens uneasy, and yet fascinated. They studied human technology, particularly how quickly it advanced despite constant obstacles, wars, economic struggles, natural disasters. None of these slowed progress for long. Rockets were launched into space, satellites explored distant planets, and probes traveled further than anyone could have expected. Humans learned from every failure and adapted faster than the aliens had anticipated. A destroyed city became a new center of learning. A failed mission became a new design. A mistake became a lesson. Each example proved that humans were resilient beyond measure. The aliens began to look deeper into the patterns of human conflict and cooperation. On the surface, humans fought constantly, sometimes with devastating consequences. But underneath the fighting, there was cooperation, problem-solving, and community. Humans could form alliances, work together to overcome obstacles, and rebuild after disasters. They were capable of both violence and compassion, destruction and creation. This balance made them unpredictable, and unpredictability made them dangerous in ways the aliens could not measure. One of the most striking things the aliens noticed was human curiosity. It was not limited to science or exploration. Humans constantly asked questions about themselves, about the universe, and about the future. They explored, experimented, and tried to understand the unknown. Even their failures were part of this process. A failed experiment was not the end. It was another step toward knowledge. This curiosity, combined with resilience, made humans far more formidable than any weapon they had seen. As they observed, the aliens also noticed the emotional complexity of humans. Emotions that might seem like weaknesses to other species were, for humans, a source of strength. Love inspired incredible acts of courage. Grief motivated progress. Hope kept communities alive in the darkest times. Joy fueled creativity and innovation. Anger could drive action or spark change. Humans could turn even their most unpredictable feelings into tools for survival and growth. The aliens realized that human emotions were not weaknesses but advantages, powers that no weapon could match. The alien fleet also examined how humans learned from the past. History was full of mistakes, wars, and catastrophes, but humans documented everything. They learned from failure and shared their knowledge with future generations. No other species in the galaxy displayed this level of collective learning. Humans built civilizations that rose, fell, and rose again, stronger each time. The aliens began to understand that humans did not just survive, they evolved through struggle. Then came the moment that made the aliens hesitate like never before. They intercepted a communication that was deeply encrypted, a hidden message that few humans outside a secret circle could even decode. It was a record of lessons learned, failures overcome, and warnings for the future. The message was simple in words but profound in meaning. We may face the impossible, we may fail, we may burn, but we will rise again. We do not surrender, we adapt. The aliens froze. These words were not aggressive, yet they carried a message of power that no technology could match. Humans were fragile and unpredictable, yet their will and determination made them a force that could not be ignored. They could be crushed physically, yet they would survive mentally, emotionally, and creatively. Humans had a kind of strength the aliens had never measured before, one that was invisible but far more dangerous than weapons or fleets. The aliens realized that attacking Earth would not be a simple operation. They could measure weapons, technology, and resources, but they could not predict human spirit. Any attempt at conquest could backfire in ways the aliens could not foresee. A single underestimation of human adaptability could result in disaster for the fleet. They had studied countless civilizations, and none had combined fragility, intelligence, curiosity, and resilience like humans. The more they observed, the more cautious they became. They also noticed how humans celebrated life despite hardships. Even in the darkest times, people found ways to create joy, to build hope, to inspire each other. Festivals, art, music, stories, all of these were expressions of survival, creativity, and community. For humans, even simple things like a shared meal or a song carried meaning and strength. The aliens began to see that humans drew power not only from tools or knowledge, but from connection, culture, and creativity. At the same time, humans remained unaware of the silent watchers beyond their skies. They continued exploring, experimenting, and building, oblivious to the danger that had almost surrounded them. Yet the aliens understood that any misstep by humans could create unpredictable consequences. Humans had the potential to reach far beyond their planet in ways the fleet could not yet measure. They were advancing faster than expected, driven by curiosity, necessity, and sheer will. The aliens debated among themselves. Some argued that Earth could be ignored for now. It posed no immediate threat. Others insisted that humans were unpredictable, and unpredictability was dangerous. They could adapt, survive, and even thrive against forces that seemed unbeatable. Every calculation suggested that a direct attack might fail. Every observation confirmed that humans were evolving faster than expected. Ultimately, the Council realized something important. Humans were not just another species. They were a force of nature. Fragile yet resilient, chaotic yet brilliant, emotional yet strategic. They could survive disasters, overcome enemies, and innovate in ways that no other civilization could match. Any attempt to control or conquer Earth would risk failure, not because humans were powerful in weapons alone, but because their will, creativity, and adaptability could not be predicted. And so, the fleet remained on the edge of the solar system, watching but not acting. Earth continued spinning, alive with energy, movement, and curiosity. Humans continued to live, work, create, and explore, unaware of the observers beyond the stars. They were fragile, yes, but resilient. They were unpredictable, yet intelligent. They were capable of great destruction, yet equally capable of extraordinary creation. The aliens had come to study, perhaps to conquer. Instead, they had learned a lesson they had not expected. Strength was not measured only by weapons or fleets. It could be measured by resilience, adaptability, and the will to survive. Humans possessed these qualities in ways that defied expectation. They were a species to be respected and underestimated at one's peril. The fleet eventually began to move further away, leaving Earth untouched. The planet remained unaware of the danger it had avoided. Humans went on with their lives, building cities, exploring space, and dreaming of the future. The aliens left with a silent acknowledgement. Humans were unpredictable, resilient, and capable of surviving anything. Any attempt to underestimate them would be a mistake. As the solar system continued its journey around the sun, life on Earth went on. People laughed, worked, loved, struggled, and dreamed. They argued, made mistakes, learned lessons, and built the future. They had no idea of the silent watchers who had studied them, calculated their potential, and ultimately decided to wait. The aliens had learned that humans were not just another civilization. They were unpredictable, unyielding, and unstoppable in ways that could not be measured. For the first time, the fleet understood that observation alone was enough. Humans did not need to be conquered to be recognized as a threat. Their spirit, their creativity, their adaptability, and their determination made them a species that could not be ignored. Any future conflict would require caution, respect, and preparation beyond what the aliens had ever considered necessary for any other species. And so, Earth remained safe, spinning quietly in its orbit, alive with a spirit that no weapon, no fleet, and no alien force could fully understand. The planet had survived observation and judgment, not because it was powerful in the usual sense, but because its people were human, unpredictable, resilient, creative, and unyielding. The alien fleet lingered at the edge of the solar system, still studying Earth. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, yet they did not move closer. They had come expecting an easy judgment, a simple calculation to decide whether the planet could be taken or ignored. Instead, they found themselves confronted with something they could not measure. Humans were unpredictable, and unpredictability made them dangerous in ways the aliens had never faced before. It began with the signals. The aliens intercepted one that was unlike any other they had seen. It came from a remote research station, far from the cities, a place where humans quietly explored the mysteries of the universe. The transmission was complex, but when decoded, it revealed not just knowledge, but intention. Humans were learning faster than expected. They were not merely observing the stars. They were experimenting with energy, space, and time in ways that no one thought possible. It was not aggressive, but it carried an unmistakable message. Humans were preparing for challenges beyond their own planet. The aliens were unsettled. They had studied countless civilizations, but humans were different. They were fragile, yet they learned quickly. They were disorganized, yet highly adaptive. They could destroy themselves and yet rise stronger. Every calculation that suggested a weak species was contradicted by new evidence. Humans were a puzzle the aliens could not solve, and puzzles could be dangerous. As they observed, the aliens also noticed humans helping each other in ways that were hard to predict. When disasters struck, humans did not only survive, they found ways to save each other, rebuild, and improve. Floods, earthquakes, fires, and storms tested them constantly, yet each test seemed to strengthen them. The aliens realized that human resilience was not just physical but social and emotional. They thrived together. Even their conflicts taught lessons. Every mistake, every failure, every loss became a source of knowledge and progress. Then the aliens discovered something that truly froze them. A transmission, hidden and highly encrypted, reached their sensors. It was a record, a declaration, and a warning all in one. Humans had sent it not to challenge the aliens, but to leave a statement in case someone was listening. The message read, "We may face impossible odds. We may fall. We may burn, but we rise, we learn. We do not surrender, we adapt. Underestimate us at your peril." The words were simple, yet the meaning was profound. Humans were not sending threats, but the message carried a warning. It spoke of resilience, intelligence, and determination. It showed a species that would never give up, no matter the odds. The aliens had seen many civilizations, but none had delivered such a quiet yet powerful statement. For days, the fleet remained motionless, studying the planet below. Humans went about their lives, completely unaware of the silent watchers beyond the sky. People worked, built, argued, created, and dreamed. They experienced joys and struggles, moments of courage and times of despair. They lived ordinary lives, yet in those lives was a force the aliens could not ignore. Every act, small or large, demonstrated resilience, creativity, and the ability to adapt. The aliens debated among themselves. Some believed humans were not yet a threat and could be observed safely. Others warned that their unpredictability made them dangerous. Unlike other species, humans could not be measured simply by weapons or technology. Their strength was invisible, rooted in creativity, willpower, and the ability to survive against impossible odds. Every analysis confirmed that humans could not be underestimated. What unsettled the aliens the most was how quickly humans could learn and improve. Failures became lessons, mistakes became strategies, and disasters became opportunities. Humans could adapt to almost anything, often faster than the aliens could predict. They were fragile, yes, but their resilience made them stronger than any technology could measure. They were evolving before the aliens' eyes, becoming more capable, more aware, and more formidable. The fleet observed human inventions and discoveries. Rockets that once failed now reached orbit with ease. Satellites monitored the planet and beyond. Experiments in energy and space were conducted quietly but efficiently. Humans were solving problems not with brute force but with intelligence, ingenuity, and persistence. They were small, vulnerable creatures, yet their progress was undeniable. The aliens also noticed the human spirit reflected in culture. Art, music, stories, and traditions were not just expressions. They were tools for survival and connection. Humans celebrated life even in the hardest times. Festivals, songs, and shared rituals strengthened communities. Creativity itself became a survival strategy. The aliens realized that humans drew power from more than science or technology. Their culture, emotions, and shared experiences were as important as any weapon or machine. Then the aliens began to understand the real danger. Humans were impossible to predict because they combined intelligence, emotion, creativity, and adaptability. They could act irrationally, and yet those actions often led to success. They could fail spectacularly and yet rise stronger. Their unpredictability was not a weakness. It was strength disguised as chaos. Any attempt to attack Earth could backfire in ways the aliens could not foresee. They studied human history again, focusing on moments of extreme danger. Humans had faced wars, plagues, natural disasters, and more. Each time they adapted, they rebuilt societies, created new technologies, and learned from their mistakes. The aliens realized that humans did not merely survive. They evolved through struggle. Every obstacle became a lesson, every failure a stepping stone. This made humans far more dangerous than the aliens had ever anticipated. And yet humans remained unaware. They continued living, dreaming, and exploring. They sent messages into space, asking questions and sharing knowledge. They built cities, explored oceans, and reached into the sky. The aliens watched quietly, noting the ways humans improved, adapted, and thrived. They realized that attacking this planet now could result in disaster. Humans were fragile, yet unstoppable in ways no one could measure. The alien fleet had originally come to assess and conquer. They had expected a weak species, easy to overwhelm and control. Instead, they discovered a force unlike anything they had faced. Humans were unpredictable, resilient, intelligent, and creative. Their spirit could not be destroyed, and their adaptability made them a potential threat even before they reached full technological power. Finally, the fleet made a decision. Without firing a weapon, without sending a threat, they began to withdraw. Earth remained untouched. Humans continued their lives completely unaware of how close they had come to observation or danger. The aliens left with a silent acknowledgement. Humans were unpredictable, resilient, and capable of surviving anything. Any attempt to underestimate them would be a mistake. The planet continued to spin, alive with the energy of billions of lives. People worked, loved, learned, and dreamed. They faced challenges and overcame them. They celebrated victories, learned from failures, and created new possibilities. The aliens had observed all of it, realizing that this species, fragile as it seemed, possessed a strength unlike any other. For the first time, the fleet understood that observation alone was enough. Humans did not need to be conquered to be recognized as a powerful force. Their resilience, creativity, adaptability, and willpower were unmatched. Any miscalculation in judgment could lead to disaster. The aliens had learned that strength was not only in technology or weapons, but in spirit, intelligence, and the ability to rise from failure. And so, Earth remained safe, spinning quietly in the vastness of space. Life continued, full of struggle, joy, discovery, and resilience. Humans lived ordinary lives, yet they were extraordinary in ways no one outside their planet could fully comprehend. The alien fleet retreated silently, leaving behind the knowledge that humans were not only capable of survival, but were growing stronger every day. The universe had taken note of Earth, not because of its size or power, but because of the spirit of the people who lived there. Fragile, unpredictable, emotional, and yet incredibly resilient, humans were a force unlike any other. They continued to reach for the stars, explore the unknown, and build a future that no one could fully measure or control. The aliens had come expecting weakness. They left with caution, respect, and perhaps a bit of fear. Earth had survived observation, not because it was strong in the conventional sense, but because humans were unstoppable in ways no weapon could destroy, no technology could measure, and no alien fleet could predict. The alien fleet drifted silently through the vast emptiness of space, leaving the solar system behind. Earth had been under their watchful eyes for months, yet they had not intervened, had not attacked, had not sent a warning. The humans were unaware, going about their lives completely oblivious to the scrutiny that had passed them. The aliens had expected weakness, predictability, and submission. Instead, they had discovered something far more formidable than they could have imagined. From their distant perspective, Earth looked peaceful. Oceans reflected sunlight, clouds floated gently across the sky, and cities glimmered with activity. Yet beneath the surface, life was anything but ordinary. Humans continued their endless cycle of creation, learning, struggle, and discovery. Every act of curiosity, every attempt to solve a problem, every effort to improve or rebuild revealed the strength of a species that refused to be controlled or defeated. The fleet paused, as if contemplating the lessons they had learned. They had seen human history, studied their conflicts and achievements, and analyzed their responses to disasters. They had intercepted messages and signals, some deliberate and some unintended, and each revealed a civilization that was unpredictable, resilient, and endlessly creative. Humans could fail, They could make mistakes, yet they would rise again stronger than before. Even their failures had value. The aliens had observed experiments gone wrong, missions that did not succeed, and inventions that did not work. In any other species, such setbacks would have meant collapse or stagnation. For humans, they became lessons. Humans shared knowledge, learned from mistakes, and adapted. Every failure was a stepping stone, every disaster an opportunity for growth. This ability to turn weakness into strength was something the aliens had never seen before, and it made them hesitate in ways they had never hesitated before. The messages humans sent into space had a profound impact as well. Some were simple greetings, some were scientific data, and some were deeply philosophical. Humans asked questions about the universe, about life, and about the unknown. They did not demand answers, nor did they issue threats. They simply reached out, curious, eager to learn, and brave enough to face the unknown. This courage, this openness was alien to the observers. Most civilizations sent signals for control or trade. Humans sent theirs for understanding and connection. Then there was the message that had frozen the fleet completely, the one hidden deep in encrypted transmissions. It spoke of resilience, adaptability, and defiance. We may face impossible odds. We may fall. We may burn. But we rise, we learn. We do not surrender. We adapt. Underestimate us at your peril. The aliens had studied countless species, but none had delivered such a quiet, yet unmistakably powerful warning. Humans did not rely on weapons alone. Their strength lay in their spirit, their determination, and their ability to survive and adapt. Any attempt to conquer Earth now could lead to unpredictable outcomes the fleet could not control. Even as they withdrew, the aliens continued to observe. They saw humans celebrating life in small and large ways. People shared meals, created art, sang songs, told stories, laughed, and loved. Communities came together in times of need. Strangers helped strangers. These acts were not required by logic or survival. They were acts of connection, of humanity, and they carried power. The aliens realized that humans drew strength from more than technology or resources. They drew it from each other, from culture, and from the simple act of living fully. The fleet also noted human curiosity and creativity. People explored the oceans, reached into space, and experimented with new ideas. They questioned, imagined, and tried. Even failures became lessons that led to progress. Humans were constantly pushing boundaries, not out of necessity alone, but because of a desire to understand and create. This drive was unstoppable. Even in the face of disasters or setbacks, humans found ways to continue to learn and to grow. History on Earth had shown the aliens that humans were survivors of the impossible. They had endured wars, natural disasters, plagues, and countless challenges. Every time they rebuilt, every time they adapted. They did not wait for someone to save them. They did not surrender to circumstances. They learned, innovated, and pushed forward. This resilience was more powerful than any weapon, more unpredictable than any technology. The aliens reflected on their own assumptions. They had expected a species that could be conquered, controlled, or measured. Instead, they encountered unpredictability, ingenuity, and spirit. Humans were chaotic, yes, but that chaos was organized in a way no machine could predict. Humans were fragile yet unyielding. They could fail spectacularly and still rise stronger. They could be underestimated, and yet that underestimation could be their undoing. Even as the fleet moved farther into deep space, their attention remained on Earth. They had come to conquer, but they had discovered a species that could not be conquered. They had calculated strength, measured weapons, and assessed technology. Yet humans proved that true power lay in adaptability, creativity, and resilience. Any future engagement would be fraught with danger. Humans were not just another planet to observe. They were a species to be reckoned with. The fleet finally turned away, leaving the solar system behind. Earth remained untouched, unaware of the watchers who had come and gone. Humans continued their daily lives, living, working, learning, creating, and dreaming. They faced challenges, celebrated victories, and learned from failures. Every ordinary act carried extraordinary potential. For the aliens, the lesson was clear. Humans were a force not to be measured solely by size, strength, or technology, but by will, creativity, and resilience. They could survive disasters, adapt to challenges, and innovate in ways that no one could predict. They were unpredictable, unstoppable, and invisible in their power. And that was why the fleet chose to leave Earth alone, at least for now. The planet spun quietly in space, a small blue marble alive with movement and energy. People laughed, loved, worked, and explored. They argued, failed, succeeded, and tried again. They were unaware of the danger that had surrounded them. Yet they carried a strength no observer could have fully anticipated. The aliens had seen the true power of humanity, and it had frozen them with caution and respect. Even as the solar system moved onward, humans remained alive, thriving, and evolving. Their curiosity drove them to explore. Their resilience allowed them to survive, and their creativity gave them endless possibilities. The aliens had learned that humans were not just another species. They were a force that could not be controlled, predicted, or underestimated. And so, Earth continued to turn, full of life, struggle, discovery, and hope. Humans continued to live ordinary lives, yet within them lay extraordinary potential. They were fragile yet resilient, unpredictable yet brilliant, emotional yet capable of incredible logic and strategy. Their spirit had been observed and tested, and it had passed in ways that left even the most advanced beings of the galaxy in awe. The aliens had come expecting conquest, yet they left with a silent respect and cautious fear. They had seen the impossible, witnessed resilience that defied expectation, and realized that humans could not be defeated easily. Earth remained untouched, not because it was weak, but because it was alive in ways that could not be ignored. Humans continued to live, create, learn, and adapt, unaware of the decision that had spared them. Their world moved forward, fragile yet unbreakable, ordinary yet extraordinary. The alien fleet retreated into the darkness, leaving behind a lesson. True strength is not only in weapons or numbers, but in the spirit that refuses to surrender, that learns from every failure, that adapts, survives, and thrives. And so Earth remained safe, spinning quietly through the universe, alive with the brilliance of a species that no one could predict, measure, or defeat. Humans lived, grew, and dreamed, unknowingly proving that their greatest strength was not their technology, not their cities, nor their power, but their humanity itself.